take a step back here. Let's talk in person. Let's not read into what somebody says. And if we're willing to say something online, let's be willing to back it up in a conversation that's a reasonable conversation between two people. And I think that's if people can start moving in that direction, man, we're going to change a lot of things.
Welcome to the Paddle and Portage podcast. A lot happening. U.S. Forest Service, Spear National Forest. It's a little bit of an update and a little bit of a dive into what's happening and what's happening behind what's happening in regards to data coming out about permit use for the last season and an upcoming fee increase. We're going to get into that. Joe Fredericks, Freddie, where should we start?
Well, let's start with the proposed fee increase to enter the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness during the quota season.
This has been covered by all the major news outlets that
the fees have doubled. Proposed fee will double. Yeah, that was the headline.
Yeah, definitely seen it in multiple places locally and more statewide. What's, just for anybody who's not following it or didn't read beyond the headlines, give us the layout.
Well, the Forest Service announced at the start of the summer that the fee increase nightly per adult will go from $16 to $40.
Per permit per person.
If you stay for one night, it costs $40. If you stay for a month, if you're the barefoot paddler and you stay for months, plural, it costs $40.
So roughly $24 increase in the cost of an adult.
Yep.
To use the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness.
That's right, $16 per person. I mean, that's what it costs now, $16 per person.
Gotcha.
Right? And that's what we've been paying when we do our fishing opener trip, when we do our fall trip, when you and somebody else do your longer paddle trip in September that you like to do. It's been costing you $16 per person, and now it's going to cost you $40 per person.
The Forest Service has done a couple of different information sessions in regards to this topic, and you have attended those. Is there anything substantial in that you want to get into?
Well, the meeting at the Kawishwe Ranger Station on July 14th, that's in Ely, that was one that was definitely on the radar when I've been in Ely earlier in the summer, late June, early July. It's like, you're going to be at that meeting, that open house? Hearing some feedback from people who wanted to share their comments. Of course, you can also submit your comments. Social media has been a buzz with this type of thing. So the meeting is an open house, all that, and nothing over the top in terms of what's going to happen as a result of these meetings, because the court of public opinion isn't going to sway it by majority. I've been through this with the proposed expansion of Lutsen Mountains, the ski hill here on the North Shore. It's like, okay, it's open for public comment about the project, and then at that time they proposed expansion. But if 51 people write in and say don't do it, and 50 people write in and say do it, it doesn't mean like they're going to be like, well, 51 people said we shouldn't do it. Not that the Forest Service isn't interested in what the public say, but it's not a majority wins type scenario.
Absolutely, and I appreciate using that comparison to illustrate the public feedback part. And in reality, this is a very different situation. The Forest Service is dealing with their own funding and staffing issues and are trying to address some very real priorities on the forest floor. So what are they saying that this fee increase is really going to go towards?
Right. 85% of that $40 is going to stay right here on Superior National Forest and be used for things like portage maintenance, campsite upkeep.
Latrines. We all want to know those latrines are going to be tidy.
Right. So stuff that the wilderness crew does in the wilderness. Like that's what a lot of that money, 85% is going to be used in-house, so to say, in-house in the wilderness.
It is addressing a lot of concerns that have already been voiced in that court of public opinion, public feedback, that there has been a lot of expressed need to ensure that those things happen, whether it's latrines, whether it's permit enforcement, campsite maintenance, all those things everybody has expressed. We want to see the Forest Service continue to do this.
Right. The other side of this is that we at Paddle and Portage have come out and said, this is a good idea. It should be increased. $16 is too cheap for per person if you stay in there for 2 weeks. A campsite at a state park is, $25, $30 per night here on the North Shore. And by comparison, $16 to go into the wilderness and stay at a campsite costs you, if you stay for a week, like a couple dollars a night. It's madness.
Lakeside.
I mean, it's
Lakeside
great.
Campsite.
Yeah, exactly. It's great, but it's very low.
It is very low.
And so the only thing about the Forest Service going from 16 to 40 that is problematic is that it should have been done incrementally over the years. So it's been 16. Now it's going to be 20. Now it's going to be 24, 30. So that's not like, it doesn't allow the Star Tribune and other places to use the headline of like, more than doubles. That's what gets people caught off guard, agitated. But we're still talking comparatively quite low. Quetico, about $20 per night to go into Quetico per night. This is $40 per trip. And I made reference to the state park and how those fees are per night. We did hear from somebody who posted a comment on the Paddle and Portage Facebook page after we said we support this fee increase, who said a version of like, I disagree with you and this is too steep of an increase too soon, and mentioned the economic side of it largely. But here's what's really great about that. Rather than like being defensive about like getting into some sort of online back and forth madness that occurs,
Sort of troll mentality.
reached out and had a chance to sit down and talk with him. His name's Shane. Here's part of our conversation. Have you ever been up here in the winter and done ice fishing in the Boundary Waters?
I have not.
I recommend it. I mean, for lake trout in particular, they're so much more aggressive, and you can get them like in 20 feet of water instead of having to go like 70 or 80 or try to figure out the vertical where they are in the column. It's like they're just so much more aggressive. And here's the segue for you too. In the winter, it's free.
Yeah. yeah. Yeah, I know. One of the reasons we wanted to start talking was about the fee structure that's going up, obviously. And, you and I have, I don't know if it's completely separate views on it, but maybe a little bit of a differing opinion on it, which is okay. And I think what people need to understand now, and I think everybody knows this, is division is not what we want. We don't want division. We want to try and unite, right? And we can disagree and we can still be friends. We don't have to 100% agree on everything. But I guess my take on the fee structure, just from a 30,000 foot view, is number one, I don't like when any fees or any taxes go up, especially when they've cut services. The ranger stations in the north. So when they cut those two and they took the staff down, that's terrible, right? But I've been to those locations. I've never seen them full. They're beautiful. They are. They make them very nice, but I've never seen them full of people. I've never seen the staff really busy there. But that doesn't mean they're not ever. Okay, so having those back and part of that fee structure being to going to help get those back staffed again and get people to be able to go into those again. I think that is important. But I think one of the shocks that I have is it feels like a money grab amongst a lot of other things. And I think that a lot of Minnesotans, that's how we feel. Because, and I don't want to, again, let's not get into politics or religion, right? But the fact is we went from a very large surplus to a very large deficit in a very short amount of time with very little explanation. right? I think we can all agree to that. And
in
that being
in the state of Minnesota.
in the state, that's correct. And then also, with the things that are going on with the federal government, they've cut a lot of the programs and everything's just up in the air, right? There's just been so much turmoil. But I think like I said, it feels like a money grab. It feels like the amenities there don't reflect those type of prices, since there are very few amenities. But Joe, and I, since we started talking, and I think this is one thing that your listeners maybe could take from this. Once you and I started talking, once I started looking at this and it wasn't a negative conversation, which I truly appreciate, I had the opportunity to look into it more of as an objective person than just saying, don't take my money, this is a money grab, right? And now that I've done that, I think when I get from the 30,000 foot view and I get down into the ground level, I see the need for it, right? I see the need for a change in the fee structure. However, I think one thing I read in that story from Ely, that town hall meeting that just happened, it's just a shock because it's been 20 years, and I think if every 5 years there was a small raise and we were used to that, it might be a little bit easier to digest. And when you think of the people that do the tree clearing and the campsite maintenance and the trail clearing after storms and things like that, these people get paid as well, right? And it's not a $12 an hour job, and it shouldn't be. It should be something that they get paid to do, and they want to come back and do it so that we have all of this park to enjoy, right? So I see both sides of it, but I think my initial reaction I still kind of stand behind, and that is it's difficult when you see a record number of cancellations. There are very few amenities. They're closing stations, and then they want to raise the prices. Like that just it seems to not fall in line.
When they made the announcement about the fee increases, I think it was like a perfect storm happening with the Gunflint, Kawishwe stations closed. Like, man, you can't even get your permits there. Like, now you want to take more money? I think that they would own that. And part of what they discussed at the town hall event last night that I'll probably be doing a separate story about was that they're hoping to be, maybe I mentioned it in the article, they're hoping to have those up and running again next year and use some of this money for, staff and better service, better engagement with the public, and that's being a part of it. So in a way, those two things are almost like linked together. Like we need to increase it for better services, not just in the wilderness, but outside of the wilderness at these ranger stations. The biggest thing about it that I still don't have an answer on, and that it didn't seem like they had an answer for, was why did you wait almost 20 years to do this? And then when you go from 16 to 40, it allows places like the Star Tribune and bigger media companies to use a headline that goes more than double, permit fees more than double. It just sort of sets them up to be in a place where people are like, what's the deal, Forest Service? It's busier than heck out there. You got nobody out there. You don't have the ranger stations open, and now you're more than double. And it's just like they kind of set themselves up for pushback in a way. And in
Yeah.
addition to just like the general sentiment of, I don't want to have to pay more to go out there. Like, so it was almost a perfect storm, which is why I understood what you were saying and why I thought that we could and probably would have a civil conversation, even if we like still aren't exactly in lockstep about the justification for it. I think that because I don't agree with everything either. I want to see, I'm on some portages this summer that are like brutal, man. Trees down on the portage. It's steep. Then you get to the landing. There's a tree down at the landing, and it's just like, what? But it's kind of like this money better be used for the right freaking thing, or else it's gonna be. Then I'm gonna be pissed, Shane. Like if this
Yeah.
doesn't improve the quality of the amenities that are out there, which are limited, as you're saying, then we're gonna hold them accountable for that.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't, anytime we give a little bit to the government like this, and this is going to get a little bit off into that kind of weird area. I don't want it to, but um, anytime we give a little bit, it's easier for them to take a mile, right? And then also not provide that service because we don't expect a lot of amenities up there. We expect it to be pretty rough and tumble, right? Um, so if they just continue to provide the same amount of service, I don't think people will give a lot of pushback. Um, but I agree with you. I think if we're gonna over double the cost, then we have to reopen those stations. We have to make sure that rangers are being paid correctly. We have to make sure we have enough staff, and we have to make sure that the few amenities that we do have out there, like trails, campsites, etc., are taken care of properly and in an adequate amount of time by people that are paid an adequate amount of money. And I think if that happens, that's great. One of the concerns I had in what you wrote in that story, or what you reported in that story, was 87% of the money goes to the Boundary Waters or goes to these things, or somewhere around that. I think it was 87%. I understand that there's a little bit that always goes to the government. They get their little skim, the federal government, but 13% of over a double increase. I mean, I know some people look at that and they say, it's only 13%. I look at that and I say, I like that 13%. Why can't we have that to put back into our parks, right?
Yeah. I think that the justification would be, some of it goes to Milwaukee. We've got administrative people making decisions there. I'm sure they would have some kind of it doesn't all go to like, the USDA headquarters in Washington, D.C. for.
But remember, they're getting double their take too.
Yeah,
That's what's happening. They're doubling their take. And that's happening right in front of us. Where's the best place to hide? Right in front of people, right? And again, I don't want to get into conspiracy. That's not what this is. Okay. We hope they're doing the right things right in front of us. And that's what I hope. And if they're going to raise the rates like this, then we are going to see, like you said, better services up there. They're going to reopen those stations, and that we're going to have at least what we had previously. It's unreasonable to expect in the days that things at the grocery store have gone from $1 to $4 that you won't have some type of increase in a service like this. It's unreasonable to expect that you won't have anything. But let's set something like they said every 2 to 5 years. Let's set a little increase every 5 years then, if that's really what it needs. Let's just do a little percentage or something like that. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that they had to play catch up, and they're doing that, and that this will be a one-off. This big going from 16 to 40 is a one-time. It's painful because it's so big. But if you look back at the scale, it'd probably be right around in this range if they had done incremental. Okay,
Yeah.
so we take it for what it is, and I expect too, Shane, based on some of the stuff I'm hearing from the outfitters that have kind of a back door into some of these conversations, that it's probably going to be more like $32 or 35, that they might come off of this $40, that they set it high, kind of like a county does a preliminary levy and sets it high, and they can't go up, but they can come down, that it might end up being more like $32. That's just an idea. I don't have any concrete evidence to support that, which is why I didn't include it, but that seems likely. And then, so then they can do $2 every 2 to 5 years, probably more like 4 or 5 years, a couple bucks, that I could do, that I could roll with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that seems.
I have to agree with that. I think it is a little bit of a shock to the system, but we'll see what happens.
This episode of the podcast is supported by Williams and Hall Outfitters near Ely. Williams and Hall Outfitters has been on the shores of Moose Lake for over 50 years. They have a reputation of quality and service that is second to none in the canoe country. In addition to their outfitting services, they have a great lodge to start and end your trip, as well as great equipment and food for your trip. At Williams and Hall, they're on a mission to create and deliver adventures for their customers that will be memorable, safe, and even a little bit life-changing. They want the customers that come there to go into the Boundary Waters in Quetico and have that trip of a lifetime. It's more than just a business for the crew at Williams and Hall. It is their passion. You know it right when you get there. You can see it. Learn more at williamsandhall.com and find them on the shores of Moose Lake near Ely. It's your gateway to the Boundary Waters.
I would still say this though, on the positive end of this, like you said in the article, even if it is $40, it's $40 for 40 nights or 4 nights or one night or whatever. And where are you going to camp in Minnesota or anywhere with any kind of amenities for that type of price, right? I mean, it's still the least expensive. And even for, I think you mentioned it and you're being fair in the article, even for those of us that go 2-3 times a year, which I do, even though that increases it twice or 3 times a year, it's still the least, one of the least expensive trips that you can take, cost wise up front outside of the gear, right? I would say it's one of the most expensive trips you can take, physically, mentally, and all of those things, right? And that's why all of us love it so much and why we do it is because it challenges us and it does those things for us. And I don't think this increase, even if it goes to $40, is going to discourage that. And that's the good news.
That's right. Just to get your take on this and follow up on something that you posted online when we first were engaging in this conversation over social media, was that you stated that you didn't think that we should have to pay it all to go. Are you still? It seems like you're shifting a little bit on that, or tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a way to make services like this free to the public, through rerouting taxes, through different channels. Um, I think that's a very obvious statement to make that all of us could agree with. And that's what I mean is when we have a service like this that provides very few amenities, and requires very little upkeep. And I say that with the utmost respect for those that do this upkeep because I understand it's a whale of a job, but they're not, we don't have 100-person crews out there all the time doing this, right? So as far as that goes, with all of that, I feel like that our federal government could do, and/or state, and this is federal land, but our federal government could do a better job of funneling tax money to it to help so that we don't have to, it's a very small amount that we're paying anyway. So if they just moved some of that money to that very worthy cause, I think it would be very helpful for all of us to be able to go there. And then you could still have some sort of permitting system so you could keep it relatively people free, not people free, but less contact, right? So you could still have a permit system. But if we diverted some of those monies that we're already paying, I think it would make more sense overall than ever making us pay. I think that's pretty obvious.
I think our bias would impact that only because somebody that likes to ride their bike, up Highway 61 on the Gitchigami Trail, or somebody that wants to be on the ATV club and is like, well, where's my money for trails?
And that's
It
where I
opens.
am. I'm saying all of them. We should
Yeah.
do for recreational areas that provide this type of outdoor activity for people, and this type of healthy activity for people. And I think you could argue there's a lot of stuff like you were starting to list off there, and I think we should do it for all of them. I really do. I mean, there's so many other programs that we pay for that if we diverted that money into these worthy programs for people that are, citizens that are here and could do this, I think it would be hugely beneficial to everyone. So that's my stance on that. I don't think I should have to pay to go there. I think it's federal land. I already pay my federal taxes, and I think they should divert the money properly, and I should be able to go and use that resource properly, leave no trace, do the thing that I'm supposed to do, and then come back out and go back to enjoying my life. That was my take on it.
Cool. Fair enough, for sure. Well, tell me a little about Fishbrain Chain, and like you got a big following on various channel, social media, to some other platform, like online presence, and this is kind of blown up for you. I mean, how'd this come to be?
Yeah, well, I've always enjoyed fishing, like I talked about earlier, and I've enjoyed the video aspect of it, making videos as well, and I became someone that really enjoyed editing the videos, and you have to do all this. I'm sure you know that from editing podcasts, taking out all of the uhs and the ums and all that stuff, right? So it really is a love relationship that I have with it, and you have to have that to have 500 videos out. I've got you know, billions of views on Facebook and over 100,000 followers. Do you know why I started this, Joe? I started it for my great grandkids. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm hoping that some of this media will transfer forward through YouTube or through social media and stay out there so that my great grandkids who will never meet me, and unfortunately I won't be Martin Luther King or anybody else, right? That my name lives on past, a generation or two. That's kind of how we all are, right? We move on. But my great grandkids could go fishing with me and see how I was and how I joked. And it's all pretty family friendly. Um, I bring my wife, I bring my sons. They could see their great grandfather fishing with me, things like that. And I think about, for me, it's like a time travel thing. Like I think about the future and I think about like this is a time capsule. My future generations of my family are going to be able to watch this and go, wow, that's the crazy guy that we came from. That's why you act like that. That's why you do this. That's why you can catch fish, that kind of thing. So, I don't make a ton of money doing this. I did it full time for maybe a year and a half when Facebook was first blowing up, and I got paid fairly well. I have a full time job outside of this, and really enjoy it. I'm actually working HVAC. But fish brain Shane is definitely a love and a passion for me, and it's simply because it brings joy to a lot of people, and I think it'll bring joy to my family in the future.
And your love of Minnesota is very obvious. I think you've got a pretty strong connection to the Boundary Waters. And I just want to say, in closing, that I really appreciated our ability, and I hope that we can lead by example on this, and that people can follow suit, because social media, Facebook in particular, can be such a negative place and an easy place to dump and vent and rant and do these really kind of aggressive, hostile things. But like the fact that we can communicate as people and start that conversation on Facebook, varying opinions, different opinions, but come together and have a civil conversation, and maybe even make some plans to go get some lake trout in the future.
That'd be great.
That could be like the perfect culmination of this, is like these dudes were on opposite ends of this pretty important issue for the Boundary Waters, and now they're out fishing lake trout in the winter. Wow, that's a cool example. And so if we can ever make that happen, Shane, I mean, consider that an invitation to come up to the Gunflint Trail or something, and we can work something out. It doesn't have to be a big overnight thing. It can just be something where we go out for a day or something, that you bring one of the boys up or something, and we go give it our best shot type thing.
I truly appreciate that. I'll take you up on that offer. And I love your perspective on this as well, as far as social media. Um, all of us should remember text messaging, emails, social media posts. Generally, you can't tell the tone that people have. Most of us read it in a defensive way and read it as an angry statement, generally, when sometimes it's not meant that way. And for you to be mature enough to not see that as an angry statement and to respond in a very mature way just shows, man. I mean, that shows leadership, and it really is what people need to start doing. Is let's take a step back here. Let's talk in person. Let's not read into what somebody says. And if we're willing to say something online, let's be willing to back it up in a conversation that's a reasonable conversation between two people. And I think that's if people can start moving in that direction, man, we're going to change a lot of things.
The best part of our job is to get to have real conversations with real people about real things. And you talk to a lot of people about this issue. Feedback from outfitters, users. It seems like you had a lot of authentic, genuine conversations about what this means to people.
Absolutely. And the Forest Service, being at those meetings. And so if you want the whole who'd we talk to scenario, we've got a very thorough article at paddleandportage.com. Please check it out there, and you'll get lots of different perspectives and a little more sort of a litmus test about those meetings and what those were like, pictures from those meetings and so forth. So paddleandportage.com.
Freddie, thanks for your legwork on this story so far. And thanks to everybody who's weighing in on it.
Thanks to Shane.
Exactly. Thanks to Shane. And let's change gears.
All right.
Let's pivot to the usage data that's now out.
Mm-hmm.
You could rattle off those numbers, regurgitate them. I know you've poured over them, and now you've written about it. How much of that's helpful to talk about here?
Well, I'm going to do a very brief overview about the cancellations, the number of permits that are canceled each year. That was a big story last year because it's problematic for a whole host of reasons. I want to talk about how many permits were issued, and I'll just do real briefly here kind of a rundown on some of the key notes.
Go ahead. Let's get into it.
Well, one of the biggest takeaways is that, once again, more people canceled a permit to the Boundary Waters last year than ever before. That's according to this new data that was released. So the cancellations for BWCA wilderness permits reached this all-time high. We're talking about the 2024 season. The number was 11,244 cancellations. Now, some of those get rebooked. So it doesn't mean that those just all went to waste. That's a key thing. But what needs to be pointed out is that these cancellations, they've more than doubled in the past 5 years. So what it means is that BWCA visitors are continuing to reserve more permits than they can use. So people on Go Live Day in particular, that's in late January. That's when there's this frenzy of people lining up to book a permit for the upcoming, which is, if you're booking it in January, months away. It doesn't start till May 1st, the quota season. Everybody's booking permits. Well, we don't know when we're going to go. Maybe we'll go in July, maybe we'll go in August. Let's book one for July, one for August. Then those get canceled. And yeah, they get rebooked, but it just makes it challenging for people to know if they're going to be able to get a permit for Moose Lake over by Ely, or Sag, or Pine Lake, Duncan, Brule, you name it. It just makes it hard. It sort of adds a chaotic concept, an unnecessary, some people think, component to it. So that's the biggest takeaway, or one of them at the very least. Another all-time high for cancellations. Again, 11,244, and that's up from 2023 data, which was the previous record high, 10,245. That was the previous record, so more than 1,000 above it. Just keeps going up. I mean, that's a staggering sum. It keeps going up. I know that Pam Wright, who is a contributor for Paddle and Portage, writes for a number of publications. She's a guide in the Boundary Waters, total badass. Pam's awesome. Her and I were having some coffee over in Ely ahead of this meeting on the 14th for the permit fee increase that we've been talking about earlier in the episode. And Pam said that she had reached out to the Forest Service and said, can you, the Forest Service, tell me how many of these 11,244 cancellations were then rebooked last year? And evidently, the Forest Service said they are unable to obtain that. But it is very likely that a lot of those do get rebooked. It's just that it's that chaotic uncertainty for when people are going to go. You got to follow it on Paddle Planner, get the alert thing set up. It's just like, it's clunky. So we've done a lot of reporting and had a couple episodes too about maybe changing that to a rolling permit. A lot of people actually at this meeting, even though the topic, the theme of this open house was to discuss the fee increase for a permit from 16 to 40. A lot of people talked about cancellations. Like, it's just a thing that's on a lot of people's minds about permits for the Boundary Waters. The no-shows were really high too. That's something some of the outfitters brought up at this meeting on the 14th. In 2024, last year, wilderness no-shows tallied 3,572. And 95% of those were from permits reserved by permit holders, while 5% were no-shows, were permits that were reserved by commercial issue stations. So a no-show is a group makes a reservation and neither uses nor cancels it. The Forest Service does retain the entire payment for that, by the way. So visitor use, that is another thing that's included in this data report. Non-quota season increased slightly over the past 5 years, 6.8 in 2020 to 7.3 in 2024. So 7% of the people who go to the Boundary Waters are coming in the non-quota season. Winter camping, hey, yeah, count us in on that for sure. Again, the numbers don't really translate too well in the audio format here on the podcast, so no need to go too far in, but follow the story. Find it at paddleandportage.com. The headline on this particular piece, if you're wanting to find more and find the link and look at the data report yourself, the headline's record number of canceled permits once again highlights annual BWCA visitor report. That story first posted July 10th, paddleandportage.com.
As we learned, even going back to this fee increase, that changes with the Forest Service when it comes to user experience, especially when it's an infrastructure-based thing, takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work and discussion. I just want to say thanks to all those at the Forest Service who we've heard about throughout this tumultuous last 6 months. Thank you for your passion for the wilderness and for our deep need to get into the wilderness. And I just want to cheer you on. Keep finding that best path forward for us all. It's a big responsibility. Appreciate that you're working on it.
You know, if people didn't care so much about these issues, it would mean they didn't care about the wilderness. And what all of this means, from the fee increase to the user data to the I got to get my permit, is just really an illustration from a 10,000 foot perspective that people sure do love the Boundary Waters, and they're passionate about it.
Without a doubt. Which means that, Freddie, I think we've got some job security.
Well, it's like, I'm not sure if there's a Gila Wilderness podcast or a Bob Marshall podcast. I hope there is. I guess I don't know.
No.
But I don't think that there's one specific to other wilderness places. And there's a collection of Boundary Waters podcasts. There's a collection of websites about the Boundary Waters, magazine. Like, there's a lot of interest in this place. Comparatively, I don't think that exists elsewhere.
You didn't use the word obsession, but I'm going to use the word obsession.
We're obsessed.
Indeed.
We're part of it.
And it's a joy to be part of this community. I know you're going to keep us posted ongoing as things continue to shift and evolve and change from a wilderness management perspective, hearing responses to all of that. But thank you, Joe Fredericks, for being passionate about all of this and bringing it to us in a manageable and understandable way.
Absolutely. Other than the stories that we get to hear through the podcast, the people we get to meet, for me, this is as good or right on track with like that part of what we do here at the podcast, sharing stories and following this type of news and information. And so it's a joy, it's an honor to be able to share this with you, the listener, and really appreciate everybody that's following the podcast. And we've had a lot of different type of content coming out here this summer, and we're that's really what it's all about.
Now, whether you're listening to this podcast while you're driving, while you're doing the dishes, while you're on a workout, pause for a moment and imagine your favorite place in the Boundary Waters and just linger there for a moment. Take a deep breath.
I see a dip-up going up. I see a slip-bobber going down. I'm as content as any human on earth. I love the Boundary Waters.
Happy trails, everybody.